Unification of Africa is possible to unify the entire Africa in a way that we see that it functions for us, in a way that we see that it goes along with our values and our personal values and what we believe in, and as well as a vision that we have in Africa as a whole. This is not something that we pick as individual to either guess either it is possible or it is not, because if once we care who has what and who hasn't got what, that will only stop us. And jealousy comes from us not being able to afford what we have or what we do. But at the end of the day, the same jealousy that might actually stop you as a normal individual might actually stop you from doing the best, not just for yourself, but for everyone who's around you. Focus on the unification of Africa. Why is the unification of Africa something that people need to discuss about more often than we have done? Because the unification of Africa can only bring about change that we are talking about, because we haven't had a time where, besides the past 200 years, we haven't had a time where there is peace in Africa. Because naturally, most people that are talking about how borders can actually increase more corruption or extortion or whatever bad idea that they have about the unification of Africa, that will not lead to prosperity, but rather they have a chaos that has been made up already in their mind. So they wouldn't support an idea that they think it's chaotic. But the truth is, because you haven't tried something, it doesn't mean it is not good. Because you haven't done something, it doesn't mean it's not good. That's the reason why today, when we are talking about the unification of Africa, we are seeking people who have an understanding beyond yourself and what you want, but something that you want for your people and for everyone who's around you. This is not about black and white or gray or pink. This is not about color. So once you picture how we can actually bring about the unification of Africa to end poverty and misery, we will understand the reason why we should work together, not against one another. And the reason why we don't have the unification of Africa today, or the people of Africa don't come close to being united as one, or we are using the African OAU as an organization of power, the reason why we haven't come to what we want and do what we need to do, it's because we haven't been working towards it, because we don't have some sort of an understanding behind our brains that once we do this thing, we are going to destroy ourselves instead of building ourselves. But that won't be true. That is truly not true, because once you learn the basics of how to bring about more, either in terms of education, in terms of human rights, that we are totally certain that we have enough finance to support all these nations, and that all these nations should be used to their highest limit, like to their highest potential. Because once these nations are just failing because they lack poor leadership, it's not that they lack poor leadership, but because they lack support to that leadership. There's always a critic, there's always someone who's against either the idea is positive or the idea is not. But the love of power has made us to procrastinate the unification of Africa to this point. This is the reason why today we have the shortage of food, and we have enough corruption to say this continent might be one of the continents with the worst corruption, yet there's so much potential for those that are being corrupt to go further and build their own businesses and start something for themselves beyond going to the state and taking money. So whoever accuses me or those that comes along with the idea of the unification of Africa and saying that we have a dictatorial mind and we wish to consume everyone with fire, but it is not true, because how can I consume someone with fire when I myself I am in fire, and for me to get out of that fire I have to bring about these things, and we have to move forward. Because once we start understanding that the unification of Africa will not only bring about change in Africa in terms of the way that we think or the way that we have been perceiving our history, but because we haven't had a chance to combine all our efforts and think about them and the way that we have been perceived, or the way that we have been accepted by the world, or the way that we accept the world, or the way that we have seen the world, and our relationship with the world in general, that relationship can only become better once we know that this is what we have to do. Because if we don't do what we are supposed to do in time that we are supposed to do it, we are going to regret it. That's the reason why procrastination is the reason why most people don't make those people. Failure is wake up today and do whatever they want want to do, but because we take so much time before we do what we have to do, so it takes time for most. And one of the reason why when we meet critics and when you are talking about the unification of Africa, some are challenged by the idea and some are in fear of the idea. And you ask them, why are you in fear of this idea? Have you ever seen a unification of Africa before that you may say, but we once saw it, Craig, it was bad the first time that we did it. It wasn't, because we never had it. So by doing this is when we actually see the world in a different perspective, and then we can be able to challenge ourselves and do things in a better way that will only not gain us as momentum, but will rather build momentum for the next 100 days to 200 days, because people have to do something that will make themselves feel proud that we were able to accomplish this purpose on earth. We're able to come and do this A, B, and C. So once you have done that and you have managed to compile yourself into doing that, just remember that there's always an idea that is out there for someone to pick it up. But if you don't pick the ideas that you are supposed to pick, or if we procrastinate too much, just remember time is moving, and if time wasted is not time gained, and once time has been lost, it's going to be difficult to do this, especially with given opportunities and chances like the time that we are living in today. So why is it so important to unify Africa? We have to accept diversity that it exists in Africa. We have to accept that in Africa it's always going to be people against people. We have to understand the continent is so huge enough that we have each and every one of us an opportunity to make it out as our own selves and as ourselves, in terms of thinking, in terms of the way that we see the world, the way we want to perfect the world. But because we don't see this in a way that we should, now we procrastinate. Now we are bothered with those that are actually capable of change and those that are changing the world. We are bothered with them because they are doing something that we are not capable of. That's another thought. Because once you see someone doing something that you are capable of and yet you don't want to do it because you procrastinate, the idea isn't about how many people are not successfully doing it. The idea is how many people have failed to do it, not because they lack understanding or wisdom in terms of how they should do it, but because they don't want to do it. Why they don't want to do it? There are so many financial gains at night here, and there are also so many financial losses, and also there is so much propaganda that is working. So if you want to tell me that what we have already introduced or whatever we have already done in Africa, is it best for us or is it best for the individuals that we have done for them? Because how can you tell me the land question and tell me that I should be answerable to that? And when I ask you that I was born in a land of free people and yet I was colonized while I was still in that land, and still when I was colonized I had to free myself to this point, and that's what I'm saying. I don't wish for someone to be colonized with the same people and with the same ideas that I was colonized under. So what we should understand is that the unification of Africa is not war, but it's actually going to avoid future wars. So once we avoid these future wars, we only have competition amongst other African countries just because they want to take something from one another, or they want to do something from one another, or they want to just to trash on one another. But that's because we are not ready to see that, to see our way forward. We should be ready to move from this point that we are in right now in the present to the point that we can do something in the future, not just for our kids, not just for us, but for everyone who's around us, for those continents that are around the world. Now think, with us being able to put our resources together, just in the first year, we are likely to reach the gross domestic of $1 trillion. Simply means we'll be able to be one of the 5th or 7th richest countries in the world. This is just by combining the entire Africa together. So once we learn that the unification of Africa is not our enemy, but it is actually our hope in terms of us living here on earth and being able to build whatever we can build for the next 2 generations to 3 generations. So the hope lies in us unifying Africa beyond the diversity. We should understand, no matter how much we are going to pay here in Africa, no matter how much we are going to pay, we are not going to conquer diversity. So we should accept it and we should bring it about and find ways to communicate with one another without raising spears, because that is natural to the human hierarchy, to the human society. It is natural to fight for positions of power, but we should be able to control
those positions of power if they belong to the people. But we cannot do that because the people do not have the power they need to challenge these systematically made systems that were meant to oppress them. So in order for us to actually grow from what we are doing and help us to grow from this unification of Africa, we about it. And this doesn't mean we should go forward and protest about it. It isn't about protesting, because protesting will not give you enough results as much as you want to. Because most people that have gone through that, we have just seen the Black Lives Matter movement, the George Floyd. We have just seen the Black Lives Matter declaring George Floyd Matter's death as murder, right? And they have protested about it, they have talked about it, and they have shared about it. But can we say this is good enough? Can we say this is good enough? This can actually reduce more violence that the American police have been doing on these people. Can we say this will help them? It won't help them until they have sit down and discuss and see the way forward for them to deal with the kind of situations that are presented to them. So in order for us to actually understand, the unification of Africa isn't our problem, but rather we haven't had a proper solution to combine all these nations to actually be able to use the oil that is in Libya and the oil that is in Nigeria, the diamonds and the farms that are in Zimbabwe, the gold that is in South Africa, all the human resources combined. We can stop actually human slavery and trafficking that has been happening in Africa for over 20 to 30 years through our own borders. Each and every time, young girls and young boys, you never know who is being transported and who is being trafficked because we don't have power over our own resources and control. This is the reason why we should reason with ourselves, because the unification of Africa is just a procrastination of something that we have been willing to do for the past 80 years. For the past 80 years, we've been trying to unify the entire Africa, but because we have failed more than once, so we think to ourselves, no, this is a failure. It isn't a failure. It's only a failure if we stop trying. You can only become a failure when you quit. And when you quit, that's when you declare yourself as a failure. But rather, when you fail and stand up again, you are not a failure. Even whatever you are doing, if it's not going to be successful, but that does not identify you as an individual as a failure. So this is the reason why today we should unify, not just for us, but for the next generation, for us to be able to understand how are we going to do this, how are we going to change the world. Are we just changing the world for the sake that we want to feel that we are in control, or we want to change the systems that have been existing already without us challenging these systems as illegal? Before that, we did challenge these systems as illegal. But what is happening is that I feel like some of the people that are leading us, or some of the people that are so-called leading us, they have their own illegal ways that they have adopted the systems that we once declared illegal. Today they are using them and they are in place. And these systems of segregations are the reason why people think they are different, because they are identified differently. So this is what we call, to all the African nations that have suited themselves or feel themselves as suited, the reason why they feel like their nationality is more important, it is that they have been all convinced so. It is the same thing that happened in South Africa with the apartheid government. It is the same thing that happened, if you want to check in America, how they were making sure that the conservatives will never actually be in a conversation with the Negro type or with the black people. This is the reason why segregation is the reason we do not want to move forward, or we will keep on progressing about what we want to do, because segregation is a piece of work that was revised and done in a way that is magically, I can say, benefit more of those that are on the top of the hierarchy than those that are at the low of the hierarchy. Because the people that are at the low of the hierarchy are the ones that actually promote policies that will only lead them to their own oppression. If you want to remember well, the story of the biblical story of Israel in the Bible, they say that they don't want God to lead them. They want a king. And they were told clearly that the king will make sure that
he who oppressed them. But they were saying, we want a king just like other nations. So in order for us to understand that we are not looking and to perceive to have a king and then we can be like other nations, but what we are saying is, let's have an understanding beyond what we want and what we can do and what we are capable of. Because we don't put forward what we want, and we always put forward things that other people want. We always be procrastinating to do exactly what we think should be done in a way that we think should be done by us. In a way that we think it should be done by us. So with that in mind, we should always remember that it is important, whoever you are, it is important that you keep this at the head of your bag, that you are an important individual to whatever opinion that you are entitled to. So what you put here today and what you put in focus here today, that thing will change the way other people see life. Because you have managed to change how other people see life, you change the way that the world is for ages and years, because we are always in search for people who brings about hope. Not just for me personally, we always in search of books that brings us hope. That's the reason why most people read, because they are looking for some sort of hope. They want to keep on learning over and over and over and over again. So that's why I keep on saying, if you do not understand the unification of Africa, or you don't want to become part of it, then do not be against it, for you do not understand what it brings forth to the benefit of the same people that today we are neglecting. There are so many people that are trying to cross every day the European ocean just to get into Europe and get jobs there, and some of them are drowning. And guess what? Before they even travel, they have to make sure that if they are women, they are raped over and over again. And those women are fleeing, even if it's from Nigeria, from Boko Haram, and the government in that place is not doing well, and they don't take responsibility. Just like all these other governments, it's obvious that every government has its own identity. But when the government doesn't value people, now it becomes a problem, because it now only values the state and its industries. This is the reason why today we see the fall of Zim. Even if we want to say, no, it happened because of the decisions that were made on the land grab. It isn't. It is about how people have managed to disrupt what they had, but because they have the self-hate, they hate to see themselves continuously grow. They managed to convince everyone that everyone was stupid and that they are more correct than everyone. So with this in mind, we should capture and understand where we are going and where we are coming from. So if we procrastinate towards the unification of Africa, it's going to be so difficult and so hard sometime to come in next generation to try to unify superpowers that will be in Africa, because they will not go on the same level with other countries. And that being said, you should understand each and every country in this world has its own turn. Today it might be the east, tomorrow it might be the south, but the other day it's going to be the west. So you have to understand, with given different opportunities and with given different chances, if we are able to participate and go forth and to change what we think should be changed and how we perceive the world, then we will be able to actually literally change the world in a way that we want to see the world changing, and in a way that we can take accountability and responsibility for doing what is positive, not what is negative. So with that in mind, I'll leave you with this to think about. What do you think about the unification of Africa? Do you think it's a good thing, or do you think it's a bad thing? So if you think it is a good thing, then you must stop to actually show more people and to educate more people about it. And if you think that it is a bad thing, it's okay, because each and every individual, as we know, we are all entitled to our own experiment and our own opinions. So that shouldn't be blamed on someone else who believes in something that is different from what we believe in. So with that, we shouldn't criticize and find what makes us feel more better than what actually makes other people feel better, because we want to be better than others. So that's it for the
Yeah, funny.